It's pretty wild when you think about it, you know? Over the past 5 years, banks in South Korea have lost a crazy amount of money to fraud. We're talking almost 400 trillion Korean won.
Yeah, that's a staggering number.
384 trillion to be exact.
Yeah.
But what's even crazier is how little of that money they actually managed to recover.
Oh, right. The recovery rate it's shockingly low. It's like only around 10%, something like 38 trillion won.
Right. So where's all that money going? It vanishes.
Well, that's what we're going to try and figure out today. We're diving deep into the world of bank fraud, and particularly the situation at Woori Bank.
Yeah, Woori Bank has had some really high-profile cases recently, especially that one in 2022, where an employee embezzled, what was it, like 60 billion won?
Yeah, and their total losses for 2022 ended up being over 72 billion won. But the really crazy thing is they only managed to get back like 0.9% of that.
Less than 1%.
Less than a billion won.
So this is about more than just, money being stolen. It really makes you question the whole system, right? Like, how secure are these institutions that are supposed to be safeguarding our money?
Yeah, exactly. It raises serious concerns about potential negligence, what in Korean law is called chom, which is a breach of trust by the people at the top, the board members, the CEO, the chairman.
It makes you wonder, are they doing enough to protect our money? I mean, if the recovery rates are so low across the board, doesn't that point to some pretty serious systemic problems?
It does. It suggests there are some fundamental flaws in the way banks are preventing and detecting fraud. And, the Woori Bank case, with such a massive amount of unrecovered funds, really puts the spotlight on the whole issue of accountability at the highest levels of these institutions.
So let's get into the details of that 2022 case.
Okay.
I mean, how does someone steal 60 billion won and get away with it for, what, like 6 years?
Right. So the employee in question was this guy named Mr. Jian. He was arrested in April of 2022, but the embezzlement actually started back in 2012 and continued until 2018. It was all connected to the sale of Daewoo Electronics and some payments from Iran.
So 6 years. How did that go unnoticed for so long?
Well, the crazy thing is, it might have gone unnoticed even longer if it hadn't been for a completely unrelated event. Iran won an international lawsuit against Woori Bank, requiring them to return some funds. So the bank had to start reviewing their accounts after sanctions against Iran were lifted.
So if the sanctions hadn't been lifted, who knows how long this could have gone on?
Exactly. It was a total accident that they found out about it.
Wow. And this Mr. John, he just walked out with cash. What did he do?
He was pretty clever about it, actually. In
Yeah.
the first instance, he claimed that he needed funds for a court deposit, something related to this dispute between Daewoo and this Iranian group and Tikab. And he withdrew cashier's checks from the main branch. He used his own seals in his account, but then he deposited the checks into his brother's account.
So it wouldn't be flagged.
Yeah, to avoid monitoring, right. And that's how he siphoned off over 17 billion won right from the start.
Wow.
And then it got even more complicated. He started forging documents.
Like fake documents?
Yeah, from this organization, the Korea Asset Management Corporation. They're known as KAMSOKO. When his superiors asked for proof of a withdrawal, he faked it.
And they didn't notice?
Apparently not.
Oh.
And then to really cover his tracks, he created this shell company. It was like a fake business. He put it under his brother's name.
And he was just funneling the money that way.
Yep. He told his bosses that the remaining funds had to be transferred to KAMSCO, but of course he just transferred the money to his brother's company account. And he even went as far as forging the KAMSOKO president's signature.
He sounds like quite the criminal mastermind.
He was definitely playing a dangerous game.
So what happened to him? I mean, did he get away with it?
No, he and his accomplices were caught and they faced charges. He wasn't alone in this. His brother obviously helped him manage and invest the stolen money.
Makes sense.
And there was also this former IT staff member from a Woori Financial Group subsidiary involved.
So a whole team of crooks.
In the end, Mr. Jean was sentenced to 15 years in prison, and his brother received 12 years. But even with those sentences and court orders to seize their assets, the amount of money they've recovered is shockingly low. Out of over 72 billion won stolen in 2022, they only managed to get back 658 million won.
It's just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, and it gets even worse. Right before he turned himself in, Mr. Jean tried to transfer millions of won to Australia. It seems likely they were planning to hide even more of the money overseas, which makes recovering it even more difficult because of all the legal hurdles.
That's crazy. And this wasn't an isolated incident, right? Weren't there other cases at Woori Bank too?
You're right. There was another case in May of 2022, but that one was for a much smaller amount, and they did manage to recover all the funds. And then there was another one in July of 2023 for 70 million won. And just this past June, an employee at the Gimhae branch embezzled around 10 billion won and apparently lost about 6 billion of that in overseas futures trading.
Futures trading, huh? Sounds risky.
It is. And then in August of 2024, there was a financial fraud case involving forged documents during a loan process. That one was for about 2.5 billion won.
So it seems like this is an ongoing problem for Woori Bank.
It does, and it's not just Woori Bank either. In December of 2024, an employee at another Woori Bank branch was sentenced to 15 years for embezzling 18 billion won by manipulating loan documents.
And this is all in addition to the case in March of 2025, where that loan officer disappeared with what, like 1.7 billion won?
Right.
So what is going on with Woori Bank? They just can't seem to keep their employees from stealing money.
It really makes you question their internal controls. Like what are they doing to prevent this from happening?
Right.
You'd think that after that massive embezzlement case in 2022, they would have really stepped up their game. I mean, that case went undetected for years. It was only discovered by pure chance.
It's wild.
Even their external auditors failed to catch it. And they did announce some improvements after that, but the fact that these incidents keep happening suggests that those measures weren't enough.
The Financial Supervisory Service, the FSS, has even acknowledged that there are issues with Woori Bank's internal systems. And they've conducted a number of on-site inspections, including an extended one after that 18 billion won case at the end of 2024.
They even implemented a fancy fraud detection system, but I mean, clearly it's not working that well, is it?
No, not if all this is still happening. And you've got to wonder about the people in charge of compliance. Do they really have the expertise to catch this kind of sophisticated fraud?
Yeah, that's a good point. There's been talk about whether they need more specialized training rather than just relying on people with branch experience.
Because it's not just about catching fraud after it happens. It's about preventing it in the first place.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the technology either. It's about having a culture of vigilance and accountability at every level of the organization.
So let's talk about accountability.
Yeah.
What is being done to hold the people responsible for these failures accountable?
Well, under Korean commercial law, bank directors have a legal obligation to establish and maintain effective internal controls to prevent illegal activities like embezzlement. If they fail to do that, and it results in significant financial losses, they can be held liable for blushing.
So that breach of trust thing.
Exactly. It's a very serious charge.
So have any of the executives at Woori Bank faced consequences for these incidents?
There have been apologies, of course, and promises to do better. But there have also been some concrete actions. After that 2022 case, Woori Bank stated that they would do everything they could to recover the stolen funds. And the chairman of Woori Financial Group, Im Jong-young, who's appointed in March of 2023, announced a bunch of internal control improvement measures.
And how those measures been working out so far?
Well, judging by the number of incidents that have happened since then, not so great.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But in August of 2024, Chairman Im did issue a public apology for some improper loans that were made under the previous chairman, Son Tae-sung. And then, after that 10 billion won embezzlement case in June of 2024, the current CEO of Woori Bank, Cho Byung-kyu, apologized and said they were strengthening their systems even further.
Okay, so they're aware of the problem. But what are they actually doing about it?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? After a prosecutor's raid in November of 2024 related to those improper loans, Chairman Im convened an emergency executive meeting and issued another apology. But some people are saying that he needs to take more responsibility for the fact that these incidents keep happening under his watch.
I mean, it's one thing to apologize. It's another thing to actually fix the problem.
Right. And it's not just about fixing the problem at Woori Bank. It's about fixing the problem across the entire banking sector.
Because this really undermines people's trust in the financial system. If you can't trust the banks to keep your money safe, who can you trust?
Exactly.
So as we wrap this up, I keep thinking about those numbers. 384 trillion, one lost to bank fraud in just 5 years, and only 38 trillion recovered.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it?
And then you have Woori Bank with their consistently high losses and incredibly low recovery rates. It paints a really worrying picture.
It does. And it raises serious questions about the role of leadership in preventing these kinds of scandals. I mean, are they doing enough to create a culture of accountability and ethical behavior within their organizations?
Because ultimately, it's the customers who pay the price for these failures.
You're right. And it's not just about the financial losses, it's about the erosion of trust in the entire financial system.
Exactly. So I guess the question is, what can be done to ensure that the people at the top are held accountable for their actions? And what can be done to prevent these kinds of scandals from happening in the future?
That's a good question. I mean, banks are investing in all sorts of new technologies to combat fraud, but technology can only go so far. It's also about having the right people in place, people with the expertise and the integrity to do the job right. And it's about having a culture of compliance and accountability that starts at the top.
Because at the end of the day, it's about more than just money, it's about trust.
It is. And if the banks can't earn back the trust of their customers, the entire system is at risk.
That's a good point to end on. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.